not existent. Upon our arrival, the sprinklers had held that in check and the aircraft was not on fire. At this time, we're still working on the recovery process for the facility and for that aircraft in strong coordination and collaboration with the military. I'd like to thank the responding agencies that showed and assisted us. We have obviously Riverside County Fire, CAL FIRE. We have Riverside City Fire Department. We have CHP. We have RSO. We have EMD, Caltrans, and a number of other representatives from hazardous device units that responded to this area. Now we'll go ahead and we'll turn it over to some questions and answers, and we'll get you those specifics as needed.
Sir, what is the danger to people now? What types of weapons were on board that plane, and what is the length of time it will take to clean it up?
What I'll do is we'll refer any questions of military aircraft specific questions to the subject matter experts, and it can hopefully answer that question.
So a question for Colonel McNamara, if you will, Colonel. Was there ammunition, ordnance, missiles aboard that plane?
Well, at this time, as I mentioned earlier, safety is our primary concern, not only for our local business partners, but for the community in the local area, as well as our, like I mentioned, the businesses here. We can expect more information, more updates as they become available later in the day.
Sir, don't you think people around here...
Almost 18 hours after that crash, and the military's not yet willing to say whether or not there was any live ammunition or ordnance aboard that plane?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, again, safety is our primary concern at this time, and we are working very closely with our on-scene response.
Shouldn't people
don't you think people around here should have the information about whether it's going to be safe around here? There's a huge evacuation zone. Nobody knows what was on that plane. Why aren't you telling people what was on there?
As more information becomes available, which we expect to have later today, we will be able to release that information. And that's all the questions I'm going to take at that time. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay.
What about, sir? Don't you want the public to know? And why the delay, sir?
Oh, again, incidents like these are very complex. And so, again, as I mentioned earlier, our safety is our priority. This is the number one priority at this point.
Does the Air Force not know whether or not there was ammunition or live ordnance on that plane?
The Air Force, no, I'm not saying that at all.
You do know, but you're not willing to say.
Now, at this time, again, I'm mentioning that safety is our utmost priority,
and
as soon as we have more information, we'll be happy to pass that on.
Okay. This type of incident. What is this type of incident? What is it?
No, I mentioned again where the safety is.
What is the potential hazard for people? Potentially, what could there be?
Potential hazards in this is anytime you're dealing with an aircraft incident, there are potential dangers, and that's why we are working very closely with our first responders to make sure that we do secure the area.
Colonel, can you address, if you will...
Hold on, please.
Me,
okay.
Thank you. Can you address, if you will, what has been taken as far as potentially dangerous items from the wreckage? Right now, I'm hearing that 4 ordinances have been removed from there, and they're going to be taken off site for detonation. What can you confirm that? What can you tell us about that?
At this point, we can say that our explosive ordnance team, our disposal team, is on site and is working through the situation at this time.
Were they working overnight? Were items removed from that wreckage overnight?
I can't say at this point if the items were removed at this point.
What you're saying is you won't say?
No,
you do know what happened, right? You do know whether or not it happened. What you're saying is
I can say that our EOD personnel were on site and were working through the night.
And they removed ordinances.
I don't have that information at this time.
What is the timeline for this entire process? I know you have to be methodical about it. Safety is an issue.
Right.
But can you give us a sense, and your community, a sense of the timeline for this?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I can pass that back to our civic responders that might have an estimate for when we can expect this process to wrap up. Do we have any details on that?
Not even so much the process to wrap up, but that the execution of removing whatever it is you're removing that you are not able or willing to say right now. Do we have a timeline for that? Just to let your community know what they're looking at. I'm seeing
Basically,
long-haul truckers
right.
coming in and
I totally understand what you're asking, and I don't have the exact timeline, so I'm going to hesitate to give that information out in case it is not 100% correct at this time. Again, this afternoon, we expect to have a lot of these questions answered for you.
Sir, you can give us just not a general answer about how ordinances are removed, how long the process typically takes, what it's like, just some background information.
And that, unfortunately, that is not my area of expertise, but we will be looking into that for you this afternoon's update.
Sir, can you just explain a little bit about what these training missions involve typically, and what can or may not be on an F-16 like this?
What we can say is that it was an F-16 training sortie, and that's about all I can mention at this time, only because it's not an aircraft that I am familiar with.
Is there more addition,
Okay.
sir?
Again, what the information that we have is that was on a local training sortie. That's the information that we have.
Clearly,
And last question, please.
You're worried about something, otherwise
no.
you wouldn't have the 215 freeway closed and all these streets closed. What are you worried about potentially?
Again, it's the safety of our responders and the businesses here in the local area. Anytime you have an incident like this, we have to make sure that we secure the area to protect those that are working in the area and those that are working to recover the aircraft. It's pretty much a standard procedure with an aircraft incident of this nature. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this morning. Again, expect an update this afternoon. And if there's no other questions or should we no other comments from all our personnel back there?
Do you have any other questions for our other experts here on the phone?
Yes, can we
Thank
talk
you.
about the freeway? Can we talk about how long we can
Absolutely.
expect that to I know a lot of drivers are concerned, and
Of course.
Caltrans, sir?
Yes, good morning. My name is Terry Kasinga, Terri, last name Kas as in Sam, Ing. I'm the Chief PIO for the California Department of Transportation. Right now, Caltrans is in unified response on this incident, and we have been since it occurred yesterday. We have a closure between Harley Knox and Cactus on the 215 in both directions in Moreno Valley. We have been urging traffic with our CMS signs all the way down to Orange County, San Diego, and up into the high desert, down toward LA, for people to use alternate routes, avoid this area at all costs. Try not to use the 215 over here. I realize that the local roads are jammed up, and traffic is actually pretty well on some of the freeways, 91, 215 around this area. But right here at the center of this incident, traffic is really bad. We just really want people to lay low, avoid the area, don't come through here, and wait until this incident is cleared and the 215 is reopened.
When was Caltrans given notice that this closure was going to extend into today?
We became aware of it at about 1600 yesterday, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and at that point our staff was already en route, setting up with CHP on the closure for the incident and then activating our CMS signs.
When did this Caltrans become aware that this was not going to just be a few hours yesterday, that this sounds like stretching into maybe most of today?
Well, just based on my experience over the last 29 years, I knew this was going to be a long-term incident and that we needed to be in it for the long haul, because there's shifts of our maintenance employees.
When did Caltrans know? I'm trying to think of the
Oh,
time.
I would say probably before 10 o'clock last night. We knew that this was going to probably be a little bit longer, but we weren't given any details. We're here to support CHP and the incident.
What about rush hour tonight?
I would urge people not to come this way at night. Find alternate routes to get home. Use the 15 to get down to the Temecula, Menifee, Murrieta, Sun City area over there. If you're going to be going to the Moreno Valley, Paris area, you can stay on the 60 and come in through the backside over there. But just be advised that those alternate routes are going to be very congested because we have a lot of people living in this community between Riverside and the other end of Southwest Riverside that use this as a thoroughfare every day. So if you can use the 15, or maybe use even the 74 from Cajalco or at Lake Elsinore into Paris, that's my advice. Just avoid the area and avoid using the 215 between Moreno Valley, and I'm going to be safe and just say all the way down toward the 74 at this point.
Terry, what were you told when it comes to the potential threat and why that section of the freeway needs to be closed?
Well, I was told nothing about any type of threat. On a large-scale incident, we get called out for a response. And so we're just here to support, and as long as we're being told to keep the closure in place, that's what we do. This incident is under investigation, and we do have long-term closures whenever there is an investigation, whether it's some kind of a police shooting, any kind of an emergency incident. These closures turn into long-term closures, and we're there for support.
But do you normally work with more information so that you can make your plans for your own people and dispense information to the rest of the public?
Yeah, they give us information as to, the closure details, how long they think this might go. And at this point, it's unknown at this duration. But we're not there to collect details or provide details of the incident. Even if it was a traffic accident or a shooting, we don't have those details usually. And so we're just there to talk about the traffic and gather that data.
Can someone else also talk about other impacts in this evacuation zone area? I know there was a Metrolink closure yesterday, and there were some businesses evacuated. What else might the community expect today?
I'm going to let the emergency responders speak to that.
So I can speak to that. Bruce Barton, Director of Emergency Management for the County of Riverside. Last name is Barton. So the perimeter is about 3/4 of a mile. All the businesses have been evacuated. The evacuations are limited to these businesses within that area. As far as power and public utilities, it's only the affected building that has lost power. We do not have any impacts to our residential communities at this time, nor do we expect any. There is an impact to the Riverside National Cemetery. That remains closed. There were about 30 ceremonies that were going to take place out there today that other arrangements have had to be made. And that's the impacts that we know at this particular time. We have reached out to as many of the businesses as possible so that they can alert all of their employees as far as being closed today, so they don't come into work and don't get stuck in any of the traffic coming to a business that's closed.
So no homes, it's only businesses.
No, there are no residences in the county of Riverside that are evacuated.
Do you know how many people work in the area that's shut down?
You know what? We don't know that. I don't have that information. We're working on that, the number of businesses and the number of people, but we don't have that at this time.
What about Metrolink? Are they impacted today?
Metrolink remains closed as far as I know. Yes.
How long
Yes.
will that? How long will you?
So, all of the evacuation, all the impacts that you're seeing right now, until that perimeter is adjusted and we're given the all clear sign, they will remain closed.
I have a question for the fire chief. If everybody's
I was just going to say, to clarify, is it a 3/4 of a mile radius around from the impact crash site, or because at one point
Yes.
I heard a mile and a half on
Yes, it's 3/4 of a mile, correct?
radius
Yes.
around from the crash site.
3/4 of a mile remains 3/4 of a mile. I know there's been some conflicting information on that, but it's 3/4.
I was just going to ask about the fire in the warehouse.
So folks, this is your last question, okay? Then we'll have another
Even like personally or for everyone?
This question is the last question.
Please, go ahead.
The last question. Can you tell us about the fire? How long did it burn in the warehouse? And Major Covington, maybe you can help us out. Was it so fast burning because the plane was empty of fuel?
One thing to reiterate with the response to the aircraft down, there was not a fire. It did rupture the sprinkler system, which was in the commercial facility. It's an ESFR system, so it flows a lot of water. The fire was non-existent when we got there. We did have 6 officers from the Riverside Sheriff's Department gain access to the facility to try to look for victims or civilians. They did not find them. They were exposed to a minimum amount, and as a precaution we took them to the hospital just as a precaution. We also had 6 persons that worked in the facility, which we also transported to the local hospital as a precaution. Unknown if they had any exposure or anything, but we wanted to take all precautions.
Exposure to what?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. Anytime we have an aircraft, anytime we have a commercial facility, we don't know inside what the hazardous materials are. When we bring our hazardous material specialist in, generally they will set up what we call a plume area, which tells us based on the wind, the environment, which way, if we had an exposure, it would go. And if it's an unknown commodity that we're dealing with, they will set up a large perimeter. That's how you see that we come up with 3/4 of a mile, or we back these areas off to ensure the safety of the public.
When your team went in there, were they aware that there was ordnance on that plane?
Our team did not go in there. Did not go in there because of the aircraft that was in the facility. They were not, the officers were not. They were unaware that that was a military aircraft or what the specific hazardous materials that may be in a commercial facility were in there. So they went in just looking to help out and look for any victims that they thought might be in.
Chief, how has your staffing changed during?
We're going to have another press conference at 3 o'clock. We'll have a lot of the answers to your questions that we have.
Can someone at least
For the
address
next
the jet
shows, it's
pilot?
almost too late, by the way.
Let me answer that one real quick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yesterday we had upwards of 40 to 50 emergency response personnel here of various types of equipment and specialties. Today, for Riverside County Fire, we have 3 engines, 1 ladder truck, and 2 chief officers, along with our EMD staff and some of our other specialty positions.
Is that beefed up staffing?
That's well, we've dropped it down significantly. Again, because of the lack of a fire hazard right now, and the hazardous materials portion has pretty much been mitigated. So this is a precautionary, but we're going to stay steadfast and ready in case something does happen. Until we get this incident concluded, we will be here.
You talked about the injuries, but no one's mentioned about the jet pilot. Can someone address?
The jet pilot, he jettisoned the aircraft, and my understanding is that he is in stable condition. I think he was transported to the hospital as a precautionary.
Is he still there?
And I believe he was released, but I can't speak to that specifically. But I believe he is in fair condition or sound condition.
And you're shaking your head. He
So
was released.
we're going to
Thank
meet
you.
at 3 o'clock for a 3:30 press conference. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out.
The same
location, exactly.
Thank you, Ed.
Oh, no worries.
Did you make that in workshop? Did you make that in adult education workshop?
No, you know when they clear, we went from old buildings to newer buildings, a lot. They're throwing stuff out, and I was like, it's in here. I'll take it.
Dude, I remember when Columbia Square closed. Yeah. Down the basement. It would have exploded.
I was like, Staten Chambers might have built that, man. I don't know. You never know.
Right?
Thanks for